Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to Germany once again, and for this review we're going to have a look at a beer that's actually very well known and very well respected, but it's one that I've just never come across before for whatever reason. I honestly couldn't tell you why, but I'm very curious to see how it turns out, because it is a style of beer that I've been enjoying a lot of recently, and in my experience you can't really go wrong with a German brewed Pilsner, so quite nice to get this one done for you here on the channel. For this review then, we are going to head to Hamburg in the northwest of the country, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Holsten Brauerei. So this one is the famous Holsten Pilsner. It comes in at 4.8% ABV, and I think you know what style of beer this is. So yeah, like I said to you, this is a very well known beer. I got this one kind of randomly. I was down recently in the Netherlands visiting my good friend Thomas Groendam in Winschoten in the northwest of the Netherlands. The plan after visiting him was actually to go down to Brussels in Belgium, but because of the whole coronavirus situation that didn't happen, and I ended up taking the bus home through Hamburg. So of course when I was in Hamburg I went to my local Rewe, as you do, and I picked up a few different Hamburg beers to review for you here on the channel. So over the next little while you will see 7 or 8 of those different Hamburg beers, and hopefully you guys enjoy that little Hamburg mini series. But it felt fitting to kind of start with this one because this is probably the most well-known Hamburg beer that you're going to find. So yeah, once upon a time it was also very popular in England. They used to sell it in these green and yellow cans, and it was advertised all over the place. I remember when I was young back in the early 90s, I do remember the kind of colour scheme of this beer, but this one of course is the proper German brewed version. So yeah, I have to say, very curious to see how it turns out, and as I've said to you before, huge fan of my traditional German beers, and you know, the Pilsner is one that I've been getting really quite into recently. I have to say, I always enjoy a good lager beer, and you know, as I say, you can't really go wrong with a German brewed Pilsner in my experience. So yeah, definitely nice to review this beer for you here on the channel, and I hope that you guys enjoy this one and the Hamburg beers that you're going to see over the next little while. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Holsten Brauerei. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the German beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly, but not as regularly as I would like. We'll need to see about fixing that. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Holsten Brauerei then, on to my brewery notes. So the Holsten Brauerei was founded back in 1879 in Altona in the then German state of Holstein, although these days Altona is now a district of Hamburg, which you can find in the western part of the city on the north bank of the River Elbe. So the first tasting of the Holsten beer apparently took place on the 6th of May 1880, and the brewery symbol at that time, as it is today, was the Knight on the Horse. But the beer was mainly sold in the local area, but they did begin exporting a little bit of it in 1881, but very quickly they grew to become the largest beer producer in the Hamburg area. A little bit later on, in 1902, they bought the Union Brewery in Wandsworth in London, but this brewery suffered majorly because of anti-German sentiment after the First World War, and it ended up closing in 1920. Back home in Germany though, the business continued to prosper, and they acquired several breweries from 1909 until 1924, including the A. Janssens Brauerei, Vereinsbrauerei Bergedorf Bier, Brauerei Germania Wansbeck, Bierbrauerei Steinbeck, Bürgerliche Brauhaus Eilbeck, Brauerei Hinselmann, Brauerei Boos und Berghof, and then the Kieler Schloss Schifferer Brauerei. But unfortunately, many of these beer brands just kind of disappeared over time. During the Second World War, as was the case with a number of breweries, the facilities in Hamburg, Neumünster, and Kiel were all destroyed, but they were rebuilt, and then in 1952 they started selling their beers in cans, which was quite an innovation at that time. If you think canned beer in 1952, that's almost unheard of, I think. You know, do let me know if that's right. I can't think of any other breweries that I would know that would be selling their beers in cans in 1952. But that same year they actually began importing their beers into the UK, and by the mid-1980s it was the highest selling premium import beer in the country. But the UK subsidiary was apparently a joint venture between Holsten and then Scottish and Newcastle, which was in turn acquired by Heineken and Carlsberg. We'll come back to that later. But in 1954 they took control of the Dressler Brauerei in Bremen, and then the Biel Brauerei, which was famous for the Moravia Pils, in 1956, and then the Dannenberger Elbe Brauerei was taken over during the 1960s. So they added the Kaiser Brauerei from Hanover, Kronen Brauerei from Lüneburg, and the Feldschlossen Brauerei in Braunschweig during the 1970s, and during the 1980s they introduced the Dachstein brand. Dugstein, I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce that one, but then in 1991 they acquired the Mecklenburgische Brauerei Lübs, and then in 1998 they acquired the Bavaria St. Pauli Brauerei, who produced the Astra beer, which is quite popular in Hamburg as well. I can't remember if I've reviewed one of those for you on the channel, but I used to drink it quite regularly when I studied in Heidelberg. It was quite popular down there for some reason. But today the Holsten Group consists of 7 breweries. I think I've probably listed most of those for you there, but it's been part of the Carlsberg Group from Denmark since 2004, and the Holsten Group actually consists of 7 physical breweries from what I understand. But these days the whole group produces around 9 million hectolitres of beer per year, but the original Holsten brewery in Altona produces 3.2 million hectolitres of beer. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about the Holsten Brauerei for the moment. There wasn't really any information available on the individual founders from what I could find. I researched around quite a little bit and looked at different articles and things like that, but there wasn't much information about the original founders and stuff, like I say. So yeah, these days it's obviously a big kind of corporate company, part of the Carlsberg Group, which is, you know, very, very big drinks manufacturer. So yeah, I guess I don't know if the Germans would call this an industrial beer, but yeah, as I say, it is one of the ones that you'll find in Hamburg very easily. And I think it's in a few other regions. It's mainly northwest Germany that you're going to find this beer. So yeah, one that, as I say, I had just not had the opportunity to try. I hadn't even seen the kind of green and yellow can in the supermarkets at home in Scotland for quite a wee while, and this isn't one that makes it here to Sweden either. So yeah, cool to have this one to review for you here on the channel, especially the version that is brewed in its home city of Hamburg. So yeah, as I say, if you want to learn more about this brewery, you can check out the brewery website in the description below. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that are produced under the Holsten brand. I think there's about 8 of them, if I remember correctly. I think there's about 8 different beers, including like a Märzen, an Export. There's a brown ale as well, actually. I forget the name of the brown ale, but there's a few interesting things in there. And there's a Radler, of course, as well. So yeah, go and check that out, and you can try some of the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we get on. So I'll just let you have a little look at the brewery artwork before we open it up. As you can see, there is the famous Holsten Knight on his horse with his red shield, which is pretty cool. But I have to say, I do like the colour scheme with this. I don't know why the colour scheme of this beer was different in England, you know, the yellow and green, maybe just branding to kind of catch the English eye, I guess. But there you can see, there is the top label on this one, and you can also see the bottle cap has the Holsten Knight and shield and things. So yeah, pretty cool this one, I have to say. But yeah, half-litre beer this one, 500 millilitres, which is the standard thing in Germany, of course. We do like that, we like the metric system. So yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. And of course for this one we have my trusty Pilsner Urquell tankard. So yeah, let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I did look it up because I actually wondered whether the Holsten glass was one of these kind of tall, thin Pilsner ones, but when I searched online it was actually a tankard, so we'll drink it out of the tankard rather than my tulip glass that I would have used otherwise. So yeah, just sugar the last little bit up and just give it a bit more of a head, so there you go. That's a fairly decent pour. that is a fairly decent pour, I have to say. So yeah, do like a good German half-litre bottle. And you know, I've always found this in Germany, these things, this cost like €1, or was it? It might not even have been that. It might have been like 90 cents or something. The price of beer in Germany is awesome. I mean, especially when you go to Munich and you've got, you know, the Spattens and the Paulaners and all of these kind of the Hofbräus and stuff. To get that kind of beer for €1 is just, it's insane for me. You know, we would pay, you'd probably pay about 30 Swedish kroners up here for that, about €3, something along those kind of lines. So yeah, price of beer in Germany is just insane. But imagine if they put it up, you know, there'd be riots on the streets and stuff, I would imagine. People would not be happy, let's just say. And I don't blame them. Being Scottish, you know, I can sympathise with that. But yeah, as you can see with this beer, and as you would expect from a German Pilsner, this one has poured a lovely kind of pale golden straw colour. If we shine the light through it, it doesn't really change at all. You can see that when we poured this beer, we did have about a finger of a perfect frothy white head. That is just going to gradually fade away and be a very, very thin foamy layer. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, but you can see a kind of fairly constant stream of medium-sized bubbles just going up towards the bottom of that head there. But in terms of a Pilsner beer, nothing surprising about this one. Crystal clear. So yeah, exactly what you would expect from this style of beer. So let's have a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. I'm very, very curious to see how this beer turns out. Yeah, this one, it's one of these more kind of bready leaning Pilsners actually. From what I gather, this one, yeah, it really strikes me as being really quite bready in a sense. It's almost got a little bit of that kind of Munich Helles quality to it in terms of its breadiness, come to think of it. Yeah, and of course the definition, for those of you that don't know, the definition of a lager beer is basically a bottom fermenting yeast, cold temperature fermentation, about 8-9 degrees, 10 degrees sometimes if I remember rightly. Could even be a little bit higher than that because the ales I think ferment around 15 or 16. So yeah, I think it's between 8 and like 12 degrees maybe, a lager beer. Depends on the kind of yeast you're using and exactly what type of lager you're brewing. But yeah, the Pilsner is one of these lager beers, cold fermentation, bottom fermenting yeasts. But yeah, in terms of the aroma of this beer, it does smell quite nice. And the more that the aroma starts to open up, I think it gets a little bit more hoppy. So yeah, this one is really nice. Straight away with this beer, as I say, you're going to notice that white bready note to it. I think there's a mixture of like some sort of pale malt in here and a little bit, and obviously quite a bit of Pilsner malt. I think it's quite a well balanced one in terms of that. Some of the Pilsners can be completely Pilsner malt. It could well be that it is fully Pilsner malt that's in the base here, but I would, you know, different Pilsner malts from different regions in Germany are going to have different flavours and things like that and different aromas. So, you know, it's going to vary from maltery to maltery, of course, but I would wonder if this one has a little bit of pale malt in the base along with that Pilsner malt. Pilsner malt, as I've told you before, it's a pain in the ass to describe exactly how that smells because it's more like a kind of feel thing. It almost comes across as like almost like aromatic or astringent or something like that. You can really just smell Pilsner malt, but it's not such a distinctive aroma. It's the same in the mouthfeel. It really makes the beer extremely crisp and it's lovely. But yeah, like I say with this beer, nice kind of white bready base to it. There's a little bit of a kind of biscuity, McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing to this one in the malt base. Maybe one or two very, very, very slight kind of woody undertones. But yeah, malt base for me, white bread, maybe a little touch of bread crust in there, little kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity note to it, and one or two little woody kind of undertones to the beer as well. So yeah, it comes across very, very nicely on the malty side of things. As I said to you as well, the hoppy side of the beer I think shows its head a little bit more the more that you smell this one and once your nose adjusts to it. And it's quite typical of what you would expect again. It's got that lovely kind of German noble hop variety to it. I wonder what hops exactly they would use in this. Whether they would use, you know, Hallertau from Bavaria, or whether they would use the Tettnangers from Baden-Württemberg. I'm honestly not sure what they would use in this. I don't know if they would really grow many hops in the northwest of Germany. Come to think of it, I can't remember how. You know, the kind of the westish part of Germany you always associate with being quite industrial, but you know, obviously there is countryside there. I don't know. Be curious to know what hops they would use in this one. But yeah, I mean, straight away with this beer, you get that lovely, you get a little bit of that smooth earthiness that you expect of these German noble hops. This one for me does have quite a bright floral character, but it doesn't come across as overly spicy, and you've got a nice little bit of that kind of fresh, slightly, almost very slightly zesty grassiness coming out of the beer. On the fruity side of things, it's quite typical. I mean, you've got a little bit of that sort of peary ester coming out, there's a little bit of that appley sort of thing, and a wee bit of the almost kind of lemony, grassy sort of thing on the very edge of the nose, which, like I say, gives the beer just a wee tiny bit of zestiness. But yeah, in terms of the aroma, and when you consider what style this beer is, it's not really a surprise, to be quite honest with you. It does everything that you would expect. You're not, you know, with the Pilsner beers, you're not really going to find sort of crazy aromas and stuff with these, but it strikes me as being more towards the kind of bready end of the spectrum. So I think this one will be quite interesting, actually. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, but we're going to have a taste of this one now and just see how we get on. So this one is the famous Holsten Pilsner, coming in at 4.8% ABV from the Holsten Brauerei, originally from Altona, which is today one of the western districts of Hamburg in northwestern Germany. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, Prost. Oh yeah, that's a very straight up, straight shooting, easy drinking beer. Yeah, I mean, it's one of these ones that it's one of these ones that you can sit and session a few of, and that's kind of what I was expecting from it, to be honest. I was expecting something that was just kind of straight up, easy drinking. You know, that's it. Yeah, I mean, I like this one. I do enjoy my German Pilsners, as I say. And you can't really go wrong with these. You really cannot go wrong with these ones. And I mean, when you're paying €1 for this, and you're getting a good quality German beer like this, you are guaranteed, you know, because of the Reinheitsgebot, you know, you are really guaranteed a good beer down there. You know, when you're paying €1 for something like this, it's to me it's insanity. It's great. I love it. And this one for me, the thing I'm noticing about it straight away, this beer's a lot more kind of crisp, and it's got a little bit more bitiness to it than the aroma would have you believe. But yeah, gets a thumbs up from me, this one. This is one of your kind of your more sort of industrial lager beers, but I think it comes across really nicely. I mean, it's a different art of brewing these things, you know. The Germans really are the masters of the mass-produced beer. And you know, it's the quality control and things that go into making sure these beers all go out with a high level of quality as these things do. It's, you have to say that is pretty damn impressive. Of course, usually we review the more kind of crafty beers and stuff here on the channel, but you know, you have to admire these big produced German beers for different reasons, I think. And you know, the Germans have this, the Czechs have it. The Belgians produce on a fairly big scale as well, actually, and you know, as I say, you always get good quality beers from these places. So yeah, just bear that in mind when you try some of these. But I like this one, I have to say. The thing that I'm really noticing about this is that it's a lot more crisp and a lot more kind of hoppy than the Aroma had you believe. This one really leaned towards that kind of more softly bready kind of side of the Pilsner style, but I like how this one's just got that little bit of bitterness in it and that kind of crispness in the malt base. So yeah, this one will come across a bit differently in the flavour than in the aroma, I would think, but as I say, it gets a thumbs up from me. I like this. So yeah, ridiculously easy to drink as well. We've gone through about half of it already, but yeah. For me, this one, straight away, you get that nice sort of white bready malt just blanket in the middle of your tongue. If you go towards the back third of your palate, you can really feel the Pilsner malt coming out there. The Pilsner malt's really got that sort of bitiness, kind of crispness to it. That really dominates the back third of your palate there, and I really quite like that about it. But as you move further forward into that middle third of your tongue, that's when you get more of a kind of bready character out of it. You do get a little bit of that soft sort of white bready sort of thing. There's maybe a little bit of a kind of bread crusty note forms on the border between that middle third of your palate and the back third of your palate. You'll get a kind of more bread crusty type thing to it. But on top of the softer white bready notes in the middle third of your palate, you will get that slightly more oily kind of brown sugary thing coming out of this one. And like I was saying from the aroma, there's a wee bit of an almost like honey type thing in the very centre of your palate, but as you move further and further out of that, it starts to become more kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity, like it really becomes more like that. So yeah, a little bit of honey right in the dead centre of your palate, and as you move further out from it, it becomes a wee bit more kind of biscuity, and a little bit more biscuity and McVitie's digestive like. So yeah, definitely. But yeah, this one grows on you a little bit as you drink it. I do think it becomes gradually sweeter. The impact of this one's definitely got more of a bite and more of a kind of crispness to it than you would expect from the aroma, but the sweetness in this beer does build up the more that you drink of it. That's definitely a fair statement to make. But the malt base in this one, the malty backbone, is quite nice. And I would say that this is actually one of the better kind of mass-produced German beers that I've come across. Actually, I would say that about this one. This is one that just, it strikes a chord with me just because of that, the balance between the sweetness and the sort of malty bitiness and the hoppiness. I think that's really what strikes a chord with me. I do like a little bit of bitterness in a pilsner. Actually, it's a common trait you find with the Italian pilsners. Actually, they are a little bit more kind of hoppy and bitter, and that's something I've always liked. I do enjoy a good Italian pils as well. So yeah, this is an interesting one for sure. In terms of the hoppy side of things, I think we've said all we really need to say about the malty part of the beer. But yeah, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward along the sides of the palate, you do get a nice kind of bright floral aromatic character out of this one. This really has a bit of a bitiness. So there's almost just a wee kind of touch of spiciness on the front kind of corners of the palate, which is kind of interesting. But then round the very front curve of the palate, you've got a little bit of a lighter, you do have a little bit of a lighter kind of grassy aroma to this one, which is really quite nice. So yeah, the aroma that goes, the sort of the hoppy side of this beer, I think, comes across really nicely, and the crispness and bitterness is very good. So it strikes a chord with me, let's just say that. On the fruity side of things then, as I always say, that front third of your palate, that's where you get the nice little oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. If you go towards the back of that front third of your tongue, on the border between middle third and front third, you will get a wee bit of a stronger kind of citrusy note to this one. Almost it's almost like kind of a bready, citrusy mix. But yeah, as you move further forward from that strong citrusy note just dies away a little bit. You start to get more of these appley, peary esters out of this one. There's maybe like a teeny tiny little bit of a sort of gooseberry note out of this as you reach the very kind of front tip of your tongue. As the flavour starts to oil out a little bit more, you will get more of those kind of slightly gooseberry notes. But yeah, it goes, as I say, strong citrus, gradually just kind of fades out a little bit. Then you get the peary, the more oily pear, and a little bit of the apple kind of in there, and then a wee bit of gooseberry. Then on the very tip of the tongue, it's that kind of zesty, kind of lemony, grassy type ester that you're getting out of this beer. So yeah, it's a nice fruity side actually. It has a really nice kind of, it's a very nicely balanced beer, and as I say, for a mass-produced beer, a macro kind of beer, this one, if you like, I think this is pretty good. It is really quite nicely done. So thumbs up to Holsten for this. It's a different type of beer to what we normally have here on the channel, of course. But yeah, these beers, the German Pilsners, do go down well, I have to say that. But yeah, mouthfeel wise, for me this one has a nice, it's one of the more oily in the Pilsners that I can think I've come across in recent times. It does have a good little bit of oiliness to it, and that's probably what's helping the sweetness come out a little bit more. But yeah, you know, it's, as you always get with these Pilsner beers, it's a fairly light-bodied beer. The carbonation does have a good bit of crispness, develops more of an oiliness the further you go into the aftertaste. So yeah, nice little bit of oily character out of this one. You've got a little bit of yeah, nice, as I say, it's got a nice bit of oily character to it. I'm thinking about the hoppy bitterness. Maybe this one is a 25 or a 30 IBU, and I think I want to say 30 with this because it does get drier on the side of the palate the further you go into the aftertaste. But nice little bit of, there is a nice little touch of breadiness there. There's a wee bit of a sweet, there is a wee touch of a kind of sweet, sweetness in the middle of the palate too, but a good little bit of crispness there. And as I say, you've got a nice little bit of a mix of a kind of juice, a kind of more oily and more zesty kind of fruity character to this beer as well. So yeah, this one, it has all the types of flavours that you expect of the Pilsner, but yeah, a little bit, it gets a bit drier the further you go into it. It's got a little bit of sweetness in it, and it's definitely more kind of bitey and things compared to what you might think from the Aroma. The Aroma gives you an impression of breadiness, but there's a lot less of that in the flavour than you might expect, but it is a solid beer, this one. So thumbs up to Holsten Brauerei for this, and I think that's a good place to kind of finish up on this review. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite of the Holsten beers is. Do let me know what other beers and breweries and stuff I should check out from the Hamburg region and Germany generally. I always like getting a hold of different German beers. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all that usual stuff. Check out my social media, but have a go at the Holsten Pilsner and see what you think for yourself. Thanks again for watching. I'll catch you guys later. Slanja, skål, cheers. Make sure you check out this one, the Holsten Pilsner from the Holsten Brauerei in Altona, Hamburg, Germany. Prost.